The full legal ramifications and hurdles involved in the reparations movement are significant and complex, encompassing constitutional, legislative, financial, and social challenges. These hurdles must be addressed at multiple levels, local, state, and federal, while engaging a broad array of stakeholders, including lawmakers, courts, economists, and the public. Below is an overview of the key legal challenges and hurdles that would need to be navigated. Constitutional and legal hurdles. Constitutionality of reparations. The primary legal hurdle for reparations at the federal level revolves around questions of constitutionality. Opponents often argue that reparations would violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which mandates that no state shall deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Critics argue that giving reparations to one racial group could be seen as discriminatory against other groups. Supporters of reparations counter that it is a remedy for historical racial injustices and thus a form of compensatory justice to address systemic racial inequality, particularly slavery, and its ongoing effects on Black Americans. Courts would likely be required to rule on the constitutionality of reparations, especially if any reparations policy is challenged. The courts may need to determine whether reparations are a form of reparative justice, or whether they would violate principles of equality and fairness, establishing direct descendants. Another legal challenge is defining who is eligible for reparations. The government would need to define who qualifies as a descendant of enslaved people. This involves historical and genealogical research, which could create disputes over eligibility criteria. Legal determinations about lineage, ancestry, and the connection to slavery will require clear standards to ensure that reparations go to the correct group, foundational Black Americans, FBA, or descendants of enslaved people, while preventing abuse of the system. Creation of a legal framework. To distribute reparations, a legal framework would need to be developed that defines eligibility, the method of distribution, whether direct payments, tax credits, social services, etc., and the sources of funding. The framework would require new laws at the state and federal levels, and likely need the approval of lawmakers to establish a national reparations fund. Congress could pass a specific reparations bill like the H.R. 40 bill in Congress, which calls for the creation of a commission to study reparations and recommend appropriate reparative measures. However, legislation may face resistance due to partisan politics, so the bill would need significant support. Political and legislative hurdles. Political opposition. The political landscape presents one of the biggest challenges to passing reparations. While some lawmakers support reparations, many others oppose them, citing the difficulty of justifying payments to individuals who were not alive during slavery, and arguments about fairness and fiscal responsibility. Support for reparations must overcome resistance from conservative lawmakers and lawmakers from non-Black communities, who argue that reparations unfairly penalize taxpayers who were not involved in slavery. Additionally, opposition groups may argue that reparations would divide the nation further along racial lines. Funding and fiscal responsibility. One of the major practical challenges is how to fund reparations. The price tag for reparations could range from hundreds of billions to trillions of dollars, which raises questions about where the funds will come from. Some proposals advocate using taxation, such as taxing the wealthiest Americans or corporations that benefited from slavery, or tapping into national budgets and tax revenue. Others suggest creating a sovereign wealth fund to invest in reparative measures. Funding could also include redistribution of resources through social welfare programs or specific investments in communities of color. Policy implementation and infrastructure. Implementing reparations on a national scale requires a complex system of administration and oversight. This involves establishing a reparations agency or commission that would manage claims, evaluate eligibility, and distribute funds or resources. The administrative complexity of reparations would require significant bureaucratic infrastructure, with accountability measures to ensure funds are used appropriately. This could involve creating specialized offices at the federal and state levels. Social and cultural hurdles play a significant role in the reparations debate. Public support for reparations is a crucial factor in overcoming legislative and legal obstacles. Historically, reparations have not had widespread backing, although recent surveys indicate more support than in previous decades. The public discourse surrounding reparations includes differing opinions on what form reparations should take, the amount, and whether the broader society is ready to confront the historical wrongs that slavery and racism have caused. Some might argue that reparations would punish modern white Americans for the sins of their ancestors. Education campaigns would be necessary to build understanding and support for reparations. These campaigns would focus on the historical legacy of slavery and its ongoing effects on Black Americans, such as the racial wealth gap, discrimination, and inequality in education, housing, healthcare, and employment. Another hurdle to reparations is overcoming the potential backlash from other communities who may feel they are unfairly excluded from reparations programs or disadvantaged by the redistribution of resources. Engaging in interracial dialogue and finding ways to ensure that the reparations process benefits society as a whole could be critical to ensuring broad social acceptance. Reparations could also encounter psychological barriers, as some Americans may resist the idea of reparations due to historical denialism, or the belief that the effects of slavery are no longer relevant. Conversely, the emotional and psychological burden of the Black community, who continues to feel the repercussions of slavery, must also be addressed through reparative justice. International legal considerations cannot be overlooked. The U.S. may face international legal pressure based on precedents set by other countries that have issued reparations or apologies for past injustices, such as Germany's reparations to Jewish survivors of the Holocaust, or Japan's reparations to former prisoners of war. International human rights organizations, such as the United Nations, have called for reparations in various forms, which could influence U.S. legal and diplomatic approaches to reparations for FBA communities. When it comes to legal precedents for restorative justice, there are limited examples in U.S. law regarding reparations for slavery. However, there have been cases of reparative justice at the local level, such as the Evanston, Illinois program, which focuses on housing reparations. These local initiatives may provide legal frameworks and procedural insights on how reparations could be administered on a national level. While the legal challenges for reparations are substantial, addressing these issues head-on through thoughtful legal arguments, political advocacy and public education can build the case for reparative justice. Key hurdles include constitutional questions, legislative resistance, complex funding, and administration mechanisms, and social acceptance. However, reparations represent not only an act of justice for past wrongs, but also an opportunity to invest in a more equitable, inclusive, and prosperous future for all Americans. Please like and subscribe to this channel for more insightful content.